HOA Karen broke my 7-year-old daughter's bright yellow wooden sign at our lakeside, tied it around her tiny neck like a punishment, and sent her home in tears, yet that cruel act became the weapon that finally destroyed her. The wooden sign swung in the breeze, painted bright yellow with clumsy red letters, "Kids Fishing Spot." My daughter Hazel grinned proudly, holding her brush. Suddenly, Karen stormed across the dock, heels clicking like gunfire. "You can't put that here!" she shrieked, clipboard shaking like a weapon pointed directly at us. Hazel froze, her smile vanishing. Before I could step forward, Karen snatched the sign, snapped it in half, and tied it roughly around Hazel's tiny neck. Hazel gasped, eyes wide. The rough wood scraped her skin, leaving angry red lines. "Daddy," she whimpered, stumbling backward as Karen sneered like she'd won something important. I lunged forward, but Karen shoved past me. "Rules are rules," she hissed. Hazel staggered home, crying, wooden shards hanging like a cruel necklace from her swollen throat. Neighbors peeked from porches, horrified but silent, their eyes darting between us. My hands trembled as rage filled me. This wasn't about rules anymore. It was war. I carried Hazel inside, laying her gently on the couch. Tears soaked her cheeks. I whispered, "Daddy's here?" But my chest burned, fury threatening to consume me. In that moment, as Hazel clutched my hand with shaking fingers, I swore to myself, this wasn't ending with tears. Karen had crossed the final line. The house was quiet except for Hazel's sobs. I looked out the window at the lake, at the broken sign pieces floating. My promise hardened into steel. The fight wasn't about fishing anymore. It was about justice. And I knew the whole neighborhood was about to watch it unfold. Weeks before the incident, Hazel had begged me to let her make something special by the lake. A signed Daddy. For all the kids. I loved the idea. Our lake wasn't just water, it was memories, fishing trips, summer laughter, the place Hazel learned patience. I handed her brushes and wood. That's when Karen noticed us from across the cul-de-sac. She'd been HOA president for 3 years, strutting like a sheriff, rules etched deeper than compassion. Karen hated kids laughing near the lake. She complained about chalk drawings, bikes near sidewalks, even birthday balloons tied to mailboxes. "It ruins uniformity," she'd say. So when Hazel painted, I felt her eyes drilling into us. But Hazel's innocence was brighter than Karen's shadow. I refused to let fear silence her. On painting day, Hazel hummed quietly, tongue peeking from her lips. She chose bright yellow because, in her words, "It feels like sunshine, Daddy." Kids love sunshine. When the sign dried, Hazel stood on the dock proudly, declaring, "Now everyone knows kids can fish here too." Her voice sparkled. It was pure joy. That's the moment Karen appeared like a storm cloud, clipboard clutched. Her jaw tightened, eyes narrowing. "That won't last long," she muttered under her breath. I heard. I brushed it off then, thinking she'd bark and move on. But deep inside, I knew Karen's temper brewed like thunder before lightning. Trouble was inevitable. Hazel's pride was glowing, but Karen's anger was waiting. Looking back, I realized this wasn't about wood or paint. It was about power, hers, threatened by innocence. When Hazel stumbled home with that wooden sign biting her neck, neighbors gasped. Some mothers covered their mouths, fathers shook heads, but nobody moved to stop Karen. Hazel's small hands clawed at the rope. Her face was flushed, swollen lines rising. She looked like a prisoner paraded through the very streets she called home. I ripped the sign off, hugging her trembling body. "You're safe," I whispered, though my chest was boiling. Safe wasn't true. Not with Karen in power. Hazel buried her face into my shirt, tears soaking through. "She hurt me, Daddy. She said kids don't matter." Her words stabbed deeper than any wound could. That night, Hazel refused dinner. She sat silently, staring at her raw neck in the mirror. For a child, humiliation cut sharper than pain itself. I snapped photos of her injuries, hands shaking. Each click felt like evidence, not just of harm, but of a war she had forced me into unwillingly. Neighbors began whispering. I overheard one father muttering, "That woman's gone too far this time." Yet no one dared confront her. Fear of fines silenced them all. Hazel asked quietly before bed, "Daddy, Why does she hate me? I had no answer. I tucked her in, promising things I wasn't sure I could deliver. But my mind was already racing. HOA rules? Property rights? Liability? Karen thought she had all the power, but law was bigger than her clipboard. As Hazel's sobs finally faded, I stared at the ceiling. The house was dark, but inside me, a fire was spreading fast. A plan was forming. The next morning, I filed a formal complaint. My voice trembled, but my words were precise. Harassment, endangerment, physical harm to a minor. Immediate review requested. Karen smirked when the HOA board summoned her. Baseless, she scoffed. But photos of Hazel's swollen neck wiped the grin. The room fell silent, jaws clenched. Yet still, Karen twisted. The sign was unauthorized. I was enforcing rules. Her words were poison, framing cruelty as duty. Some board members nodded nervously, afraid to oppose. That night, papers appeared on my door, warnings, citations, threats of escalating fines. Karen was retaliating, turning her gavel into a weapon against our entire family. Hazel saw the papers, lips trembling. Are we in trouble, Daddy? I knelt, gripping her small hands. No, sweetheart. She is. And everyone will know soon enough. I called a lawyer, Gregory Holt, known for chewing HOAs alive in court. When he heard my story, he whistled low. That's child endangerment. We'll bury her. Gregory filed suit within days. Words like assault and intentional infliction of emotional distress glared across official pages. Karen wasn't just a neighbor anymore. She was a defendant. Rumors spread like wildfire. Mothers whispered at playgrounds, fathers swapped nervous glances. Everyone was watching, waiting. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It belonged to the whole street. Hazel smiled faintly when I told her. So she won't hurt kids again? She asked, hope flickering. I kissed her forehead. Not if I have breath. But Karen wasn't retreating. The next morning, she marched through the neighborhood with new flyers, unlawful suit. Rule breakers destroying our community. Her war drums were beating louder. Karen's flyers painted us as villains. Disorderly family, they read, threatening our safety with lawsuits and chaos. She stapled them on fences, trees, even by the school bus stop. Some neighbors avoided eye contact. Others offered quiet nods of support. The street felt like a battlefield, lines drawn invisible but sharp between loyalty and fear. At the grocery store, Mrs. Barlow whispered, "We're with you. Karen's been out of control too long." But she said it fast, glancing around like a hunted deer. Even Hazel's classmates whispered, "Is your mom going to jail?" One boy sneered. Hazel's cheeks flushed red. She came home crying again, backpack sagging like a burden. I hugged her tight, whispering, "Truth wins, Hazel. Remember that." But truth felt fragile in a town where silence bought safety and Karen ruled with intimidation. Gregory, our lawyer, gathered statements. Mothers described fines for sidewalk chalk. Teenagers recalled threats for basketball hoops. Each testimony was a brick stacked against Karen's collapsing wall. At night, Hazel painted again. Not a sign this time, just swirls of bright blue and yellow on paper. "This is my lake, Daddy," she whispered. Her resilience gave me strength. I knew the trial would tear us apart, but Hazel's smile, however faint, was proof that courage could outshine cruelty's shadow. By week's end, the HOA called an emergency meeting. Chairs scraped, whispers swirled. Karen entered with fire in her eyes. Every neighbor came. No one dared miss it. The room felt charged, like a storm gathering above. And as Karen stood, gavel in hand, I knew everything was about to explode. Karen slammed the gavel. "This meeting will restore order." Her voice cracked with arrogance. She scanned the crowd, chin high, eyes burning. But people weren't shrinking anymore. Gregory stood, calm but commanding. "Your president assaulted a child. Evidence will show it. This isn't order, it's tyranny." His words echoed, cracking Karen's armor with undeniable truth. Gasps rippled through the hall. Hazel, sitting beside me, gripped my hand tightly. Her swollen neck was still marked, silent testimony more powerful than any words. Karen sneered. He's exaggerating. The child was unharmed. Just discipline. A mother shouted, discipline? She bled. Voices rose, anger flooding years of bottled frustration. One father stood. She fined me for planting sunflowers. Another yelled, she threatened to tow my car for a dented bumper. Stories poured out, each one heavier than last. Karen pounded her gavel desperately. Out of order! Out of order! But her words drowned beneath the tidal wave of neighbors finally unchained from her iron grip. The HOA board shifted uncomfortably, sweat beading. Power was slipping. Karen's fortress of rules cracked as truth poured in, one testimony after another. Hazel whispered, they believe us, Daddy. I squeezed her hand, voice tight. Yes, sweetheart. They finally see. Tears pricked my eyes. The silence was breaking. Karen's face flushed crimson. You'll regret this lawsuit, she spat, eyes locking on me like daggers. But her words felt weak, desperation leaking through rage. As neighbors shouted, the board voted. Trial must proceed. Leadership review imminent. Karen's gavel dropped, not in control, but in collapse. Her empire was crumbling. The courthouse loomed cold and heavy. Hazel clutched my sleeve, her little voice whispering, will she be there? I nodded, heart pounding. Yes, sweetheart. But so will we. Karen sat at the defense table, smug smile glued on. Her lawyer whispered frantically, shuffling papers like shields, but Karen's glare never left Hazel. Gregory opened strong. This case is about a child's dignity. A 7-year-old was humiliated, injured, and scarred by an HOA leader who believed she was untouchable. Hazel's photos displayed on screens. Gasps filled the courtroom. Red lines, swollen flesh, tear-streaked cheeks. Evidence more powerful than 1,000 words. Karen's smile flickered but held. Neighbors testified one by one. Voices shook, but stories cut deep. Chalk washed away, toys confiscated, threats for singing too loud. Karen's kingdom revealed itself as cruelty disguised as order. Karen's lawyer snapped back. These are rules, not crimes. But Gregory thundered, rules don't grant assault. Power doesn't erase pain. And this child deserves justice. Hazel whispered, she looks scared now. I glanced. Karen's foot tapped nervously. Her empire was no longer unshakable. It was trembling under the weight of her own deeds. When Hazel was asked to speak, her small voice wavered. I just wanted kids to fish too. Tears rolled. The judge's eyes softened, gavel resting, silence heavy. Karen stood abruptly, shouting, she's lying. Gasps erupted. The judge's gavel slammed. Silence. Karen's outburst echoed desperation louder than any defense her lawyer could muster. The trial wasn't over, but power had shifted. For the first time, Karen wasn't feared. She was pitted, her cruelty unraveling for all to see. The judge leaned forward, voice steady. This court recognizes sufficient evidence of harm. The case proceeds. Karen's face drained, fury flashing but powerless under law's weight. Gregory smirked slightly, whispering to me, she's cornered. Now watch her unravel. And unravel she did. Karen's once sharp words stumbled, each excuse thinner than the last. Hazel clung to my arm, whispering, are we winning? I kissed her forehead gently. It's not about winning, sweetheart. It's about telling the truth. And truth shines brightest. Neighbors filled benches daily, silent army behind us. Their presence was louder than any chant, eyes that said, we see you. We stand with you. Karen's lawyer grew frantic. Objections piled. Each overruled. Each one chipped dignity away, leaving Karen exposed, desperate, trembling. The mighty queen reduced to a frightened figure behind papers. Gregory's closing was thunder. This isn't about fines or signs. It's about a child who believed kindness had a place here. That belief was crushed. Hazel's painting was shown. The lake, blue swirls, sunshine yellow, words scrawled, kids matter. Even the judge paused, throat tightening, before nodding solemnly. Karen finally cracked. Standing, she shouted, You'll ruin me. You'll destroy everything I built. Her voice cracked, not with strength, but fear. The courtroom buzzed with disbelief. The judge's gavel dropped. Enough. Silence stretched. Karen sat down, shaking. Her empire was gone, and she knew it. The courtroom wasn't hers. It belonged to truth now. As Hazel squeezed my hand, I whispered, "It's almost over, sweetheart." Almost. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end. The verdict still waited. The courtroom held its breath. The judge's voice carried heavy. The HOA president, Karen Huxley, is guilty of assault, negligence, and emotional harm inflicted upon a minor. Gasps erupted. Hazel's hand tightened around mine. Her eyes widened with disbelief, then relief. Tears spilled as she whispered, "She believed me." I kissed her head, whispering, "Always." Karen's lawyer slumped, defeated. Karen herself shook, face pale, lips pressed thin. Her power dissolved like sand slipping through fingers, no rules left to hide behind. The judge continued, "Restitution is ordered. Removal from presidency effective immediately. Damages granted to the family." Gavel fell. Karen flinched like thunder had struck directly at her throne. The courtroom erupted, neighbors clapping softly, some weeping. Whispers rose, "It's over." But I knew it was more than over. It was the beginning of something entirely new. Karen stormed out, shouting threats of appeal, but nobody listened. Her voice no longer commanded fear. It echoed like a hollow bell, empty, powerless, forgotten.